Hello and welcome back, Midnight Readers. We are going to be jumping right back into Their Legend, Our Destiny from the Butterflies of the Heart series. This is from book 2, and I'm not supposed to mention anything quite yet. However, I just want to give you a little heads up so you guys are first to know. There will be a giveaway, giving away books 1 and 2, and some fun little extras. I can't share more details about what they're going to be yet, but there's going to be a really fun book bundle given away coming up soon in the next couple weeks here. We'll be posting more details on our Instagram page, so if you're not following the Midnight Readers podcast on Instagram, it's Midnight Readers Podcast. Then go follow that so you can get all the details firsthand. I will also be sharing them here as well. But yeah, be paying attention and keeping an eye out for that because it's coming soon. Exciting stuff. Alright guys, so recap. Where were we? We are in Their Legend, Our Destiny. And so far in the book, Shelly, the main character, has had to move in and rent a new place with her cousin, who's like a brother to her, and his best friend, who's also kind of like a big brother to her as well, due to the condition of her mother. Her mother was in a very bad car accident that has left her on life support, and in order to pay the mounting bills that were due up front, she had to sell her house that thankfully was in her name, but she had to sell her childhood home and move in with her cousin and his friend. In doing so, she comes face to face with a guy in her kitchen, uninvited, on her first day moving into the house. But the weird part was that he seemed to vanish into thin air when she went to explain to her cousin what was happening. The next day, there's somebody in her kitchen once again, which looks like a younger version of the same guy, who turns out to be his brother. She walks him out, and her cousin yells at her for being so kind because he feels that she's not being safe and looking out for herself since that's the second break-in, technically, they've had in 2 days. And she can't help it because she feels like drawn to these people. She doesn't know if they're homeless or what based on their condition or the way they look. But there's like this pull, if you will, that she feels towards them, and she feels deep down that they're really harmless. She doesn't think that they're trying to do anything malicious or bad. And she's just trying to figure out what's going on. Like, is she going crazy? Is it the stress from the move and her mom being in the hospital and everything in her world kind of crumbling that's making her see things? Is she imagining these people in like becoming invisible or disappearing? Or is there something actually going on that which she feels in her gut and mind is the case? So we're going to jump right back in. Where we left off was the guy, the older of the two brothers, had just talked to her. And there were graves that they discovered on the property, and she was kind of creeped out by it, but he explained that it was his parents who had passed away 2 years ago. And yeah, so they kind of had like this touching bonding moment, and she's kind of like, what the hell, why aren't my cousin or friend like checking on me? They're always super protective, and when she gets back to the house, like the lights all flick on, and she's like, oh, they were watching me the whole time from the windows. So yeah, that's where we're at. We're at chapter 6. Here we go. What was that about? They asked in unison as I entered the house. Asher was still sitting on the couch by the front window, and Logan had come halfway down the stairs. I don't really know. It was strange. I think he just wanted to apologize for him and his brother invading our personal space, and the overall awkward first meeting. The kid said that to you? Asher asked, looking a bit shocked. What? No, Heath. I thought you guys were keeping an eye on me. We were, once we realized you had left the porch. By the time we spotted you, you were halfway to the creek, Asher explained. I don't get it. I opened the door and watched you go out to talk to the kid. How did you end up with his brother? Logan questioned. As I finished explaining what had transpired, Asher and Logan exchanged sideways looks. What? I questioned. I'm not saying that it was, but it sure seems like it was a setup. Like the kid was used to lure you out for his brother. I don't think so. Alec had looked as shocked to see Heath as I was, I argued. I don't know. I still don't trust them. I went ahead and installed the security cameras down here while you guys were at the store today. I also went for a jog to get to know the area better. I saw the graves you were talking about, and looked up the names on the headstones. Sorry to burst your bubble, Princess. The kid and his brother are just normal guys, not ghosts. The graves belong to their parents. Yeah, I know. Heath told me what happened, I said, cutting him off. Well, they may not be ghosts, but that doesn't mean they haven't been creeping around. Don't forget that. No matter how much they try to charm you. Asher reminded me in his brotherly voice. I nodded. I know, and I'm definitely keeping my guard up. But I also think there may be more to them than meets the eye. There's something going on that I can't quite put my finger on. I explained. Well, for now, try not to stray too far without taking one of us with you, Asher instructed. Sure, no problem. Alright, guys. It's been a long day, and I need my beauty rest, I said, heading towards the stairs. Logan stepped aside, allowing me to pass. Good night, he said with a little half smile. That smile used to give me butterflies. He was the most handsome of my cousin's friends growing up, and has only seemed to get better looking with every passing year. At some point, I had accepted the fact that he sees me as a little sister, and learned to be happy with that. However, every now and then, when he looks at me like he just did, I can't help the little twinge of butterflies I still feel. As I was getting ready to change, the dancing curtains brought my mind back to Heath. I walked over to the window and gazed out. I half expected to see him out by the creek, but everything was still and quiet, and Heath was nowhere to be seen. A little wave of disappointment came over me. What was wrong with me? Why did I care if he was out there or not? I changed, turned on my relaxation music, and climbed into bed. I stared up at the fan going around in my dimly moonlit room. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't get the interactions with Heath out of my head. The sparks I felt every time he touched me. How gently he had wiped my tear away. How natural talking to him had felt. And then, now, how his demeanor had shifted towards the end of the evening, leaving me in a state of awkward confusion. Had I said or done something to have caused it? All of a sudden, I was standing in front of Heath, looking up into his eyes. I felt completely at ease. As he extended his hand, I placed mine in his, and, in an instant, I was standing in a large, elegant bedroom. Across from me, Heath sat on the bed with his head hung low. On the nightstand next to him sat a full, untouched bottle of antidepressants. You shouldn't be here, he said in a low voice without looking up. Despite his words, I was drawn to him. I understood his pain. Without thinking, I went and sat next to him, placing my hand on his shoulder. There were those sparks again. I was pleasantly surprised when he put his hand on mine. We sat there like that for a while, to the point it should have been awkward and one of us should have wanted to pull away, but I had no desire to do so. Something was telling me that this is where I needed to be. You don't have to go through this alone, I whispered. It's not that simple, he replied, pulling away. He was clearly upset. Then he was gone. Gone! Vanished! He had just disappeared completely without a trace. But, as he did, a second bottle of pills had been knocked off the table. I didn't recognize the name, and the bottle gave very little information. However, it was clear that he had in fact been taking this one, as there were only a handful left. I jumped, my heart skipping a beat as he reappeared again on the other side of me. I'm sorry, I can't help it, he said before disappearing once again. I had to blink to make sure that my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. What the hell was going on? But a second later, he was back to where he had originally started, on the bed. He had tears in his eyes. Although my heart was racing faster than it ever had in my entire life, and I was somewhere between confused and terrified, I felt compelled to wipe the stray tear that had escaped his eye. As I did, his hand clasped down on mine, and I could feel his body shaking. Every fiber of my being was being drawn to him. Then, as if they had a mind of their own, my arms flew around his neck and pulled him in tightly. As his arms wrapped around me in return, I felt safe, and a sense of calm began to sweep over me. His body had stopped shaking, as well, and his breathing had returned to normal. We stayed like that, holding each other tightly, like our lives depended on it. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, his body tensed. What's wrong? I whispered. You're not alone. You need to wake up now. Before I could ask what he meant, my eyes fluttered open, only to discover I was in my bed, in my own room. It was still dark, and the clock read 4:15 a.m. My attention was drawn to the bed as I felt something shift behind me. Before pulling me back, I began to panic, and was struggling to pull away when I was completely overpowered. My arms were being held down by a muscular arm wrapped across me, and whoever it was had me pulled so close that I couldn't move. What was going on? Hey, calm down. It's just me. You're safe. I got you. I immediately stopped struggling upon hearing Logan's voice. What are you doing in here? I questioned, still attempting to decipher reality from my dream. God, had that really been a dream? It had felt so incredibly real. I heard noise coming from your room, and when I popped my head in, realized you must have been having a bad dream. I was silent. Had I been making noise in my sleep? I had never done that before. Not that I was aware of, anyway. And I'm sure if Asher had ever witnessed me doing it, he would have been sure to tease me about it. As I thought about it more, I also couldn't help but wonder, had my dream really been bad? I had felt so peaceful and in place, at least in the second half of the dream. Why would I have been fussing in my sleep? After a minute, Logan's grip loosened. With everything that's been going on, I'd feel more comfortable if I stayed here tonight. Is that okay? Yeah, I whispered. He then tugged on my shoulder, rolling me over and positioning me so my head was laying on his chest. He gently stroked my hair for several minutes before whispering, "You still awake?" I had been deep in thought about my crazy dream again. I definitely didn't want to tell him that I had been having a dream about being in another man's arms as I laid there in his. So, I remained quiet and allowed him to think that I'd fallen back asleep. In his arms. Under different circumstances, or any other time in my life, being in Logan's arms, like this, would have been like a dream come true. I was surprised when he began to speak. "I wonder if you realize how protective of you I am, how much you mean to me. If your cousin weren't my best friend, I would have crossed that line 100 times by now, but I can't risk screwing things up. You both mean too much to me. Even this is pushing it, but there's no way I'm letting you out of my arms tonight. I need to make sure you're okay, and safe, and this is the only place that I know you definitely will be." My heart was doing flips in my chest. That was the sweetest confession, in a twisted Romeo and Juliet sort of way, that I had ever heard. I couldn't help but smile at the fact that he had felt the same about me as I had for him for so many years. As I took in the feeling of being snuggled up on his chest, I was immediately reminded of the feeling of being in Heath's arms, a feeling that nothing I had ever experienced could compare to. God, what's wrong with you? It was just a dream, I reminded myself. Chapter 7. Upon waking, I was a little disappointed to discover that Logan was already gone. I still couldn't believe his confession. Part of me wished I had said that I was awake when he had asked. But, then again, odds are, if I had said that I had been awake, he probably would have never confessed. Although wide awake now, it took me another 15 minutes to get out of bed. I felt like I hadn't slept at all. I couldn't get that intense dream I had just had out of my head, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it had left me with. Frustrated, I went to take a cool shower. As I was stepping out, I heard the front door open and then the muffled sound of Asher's voice. He was talking to someone, but I couldn't make out the other person's voice. I could, however, tell that it belonged to a man. Could it be Heath? I quickly got dressed and put on a splash of makeup before hurrying downstairs. My eyes trailed up and down from the work boots to the baggy jeans before coming to rest on his t-shirt that read, "JT's Repairs." The repairman was apologizing for not making it out yesterday. Although I was a bit disappointed it wasn't Heath, I can't say that I wasn't happy that our air was finally going to get fixed. "Morning, Shell," Asher said with a nod before turning back to the repairman. I headed to the kitchen to make my morning protein shake before joining him in the living room. "Hey, I'm going for a jog to check out that trail that starts out next to the creek." "I'd rather you wait for me to go with you, but I have no idea how long this is going to take. Actually, you know what? Logan left about 20 minutes ago for his run, so you'll probably cross paths. Just be sure to take your phone with you, and pepper spray." I smiled before sarcastically replying, "Yes, big brother." With that, I grabbed my things and headed out. I was only about 15 minutes into my jog when I began noticing a strange symbol carved into some of the boulders and trees. I'm not sure why, but I found it beautiful. It almost looked like the outline of wings with a spiral in the center. I took out my phone and snapped a picture of one that was carved into a tree as I continued to jog. I had no idea what it meant or represented, but I was intrigued and intended to find out. About 20 more minutes, I came to a crossroads of sorts. The main trail veered off to the right, whereas a much narrower path veered to the left. I was just about to continue on the main path when another one of the symbols caught my eye, near the entrance of the smaller path. It was carved into a boulder, but the surrounding shrubs were so overgrown that it almost was hard to see. I slid to a walk as I embarked on the narrow path. It almost felt like I was entering a secret garden, or jungle even. Tall, majestic trees lined the path, some of which had vines wrapping around them, giving them a beautifully elegant look. The leaves rustled in the treetops with the light breeze, creating a peaceful ambience. As I continued to explore further, I could swear I could hear the faint sound of drumming and humming. Although growing a bit nervous, my curiosity was driving me to continue. I walked for another 10 minutes, and was yet to find the source of the music. However, I had now determined that it most definitely had a Native American sound to it. I wondered if this was one of the other tenants. We had yet to meet any of the other occupants in the other homes, as they were spread out quite a bit further on the property. Just then, I froze dead in my tracks. My gaze was met by that of a man who bore an uncanny resemblance to Heath. Only this man had brown hair and brown eyes, much unlike Heath's blonde hair and bright blue eyes. His skin was tanned, and he wore nothing more than a small garment that covered just below his waist. It looked like a very realistic recreation of what the Native Americans had worn. My eyes were drawn to his chest. which bore the same symbol as I had seen sprinkled along the path. "Join me," he said, nodding next to him. Seeing my hesitation, he continued, "Don't worry, I don't bite." I gave a little laugh in an attempt to hide my nerves as I cautiously approached. He began gently patting the drum again as he watched me sit on the large rock next to him. "You look like something's on your mind," he said questioningly. "I'm not sure what you mean," I replied. "Something is troubling you. You are seeking answers." I stared at him. How the hell could he possibly know that? Or was that just something that he said to everyone? People are usually trying to figure out one thing or another, so that could be a pretty effective conversation starter to use regularly. "No, I don't ask that to everyone," he said, staring at me intently. A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't said that out loud, so how the hell did he know what I was thinking? "I can help you with the answers you seek, but there is something I need your help with as well," he continued. I smiled and stood before politely informing him that I should be heading home. To say that I was freaked out right now would have been a complete understatement. "Just give me 5 minutes. If you still want to leave after that, I will not try to stop you. I give you my word." I nodded before sitting back down. "You and I are connected, as there is someone we both care about. I know you probably feel confused right now, but if you really think back to all the little things over the last few days, you'll start to recognize the signs." That was it. I was fairly certain that this guy was insane. Nothing he was saying was making any sense, and I was desperately trying to come up with an excuse to get out of here, when he continued speaking once again. "Let me tell you a story, a Native American legend. There once was a tribe that occupied these lands. They were a kind and gentle people. They had been here for hundreds of years, but the resources were beginning to become scarce. Some of the warriors ventured out and discovered nearby lands that were bountiful. Eventually, they came back to take their families with them to the new lands. They tried to get the chief and his family to join them as well. Yet he refused every offer, as he knew just how special this land is. Eventually, it became apparent that these new lands lacked some of the essential resources that were needed to survive, and the same went for the land here too. It needed time to regrow and replenish. So, the tribe members established a system that allowed them to share the bounty of the lands. Everything was working in harmony, until one tragic night. A group of settlers came, settling upon the tribe's land. The chief's father, as well as a couple members, attempted to peacefully tell the settlers that although they didn't mind them staying until they figured out where they were going to go, this land was already inhabited. The settlers didn't take kindly to the tribe members. They saw them as a threat and were scared by the way they spoke and dressed. That night, in what should have been a peaceful interaction, the chief's father lost his life, alongside several other tribe members. Upon learning of this, and seeing the pain in his mother's eyes, the chief lost control. As the anger and sorrow swirled within him, an angry wind swirled and thrashed throughout the land. The chief assembled his best warriors and weapons, preparing for battle. His grandfather, the elder, and shaman of the tribe, stopped him before he headed out and led him to a cave that was believed to house the spirits of their ancestors. It is rumored that the magic held by the past generations was bestowed upon him that fateful night, and when he emerged, he possessed abilities that had been believed to be lost to time. He was now able to move from place to place in the blink of an eye. He led his people to confront the ruthless settlers, armed with his new abilities. Although, feeling the pain from the loss of his father and the tribe members, he led his people calmly into the settlers' encampment with the intention of a peaceful negotiation. Frightened by this second wave of warriors, who were larger in numbers than the first group, the settlers immediately began to attack. The chief teleported himself around the warriors, helping where he could. His approach was proving to be successful, as the settlers were beginning to retreat. But, with his powers being new, he lacked full control. Before he knew it, he found himself appearing in front of their leader. Two men grabbed his arms, and the leader knocked him to his knees. The leader was preparing to take the chief's life, when a beautiful blonde girl emerged from the leader's tent. She was his daughter. As her eyes met the chief's, she cried out for her father to stop. When he refused to listen to his daughter, she took a knife to her own throat, threatening to take her own life if her father took the chief's. As she walked slowly and deliberately toward the chief, with the knife still at her own throat, nobody, natives or settlers, dared to move. She positioned herself between the chief and her father. Eventually, her father gave in and ordered the settlers to lower their weapons and to bring the chief to his feet. Just as this happened, one of the settlers yelled out that she was a traitor and lunged at the leader's daughter. The chief, using his abilities, managed to appear in front of her just in time to stop the blade from piercing her. It plunged into his chest. It is said that as he fell to the ground, she could feel his pain and fell to her knees beside him. As the fighting began to break out again, the chief used the last of his strength to yell to his warriors to stand down. As his eyes fluttered shut, all fighting stopped and both natives and settlers rushed to tend to the chief. The settlers left the next day, all except one of their healers and the leader's daughter. It is said that the leader had felt so bad about attacking these people on their own land that with an overwhelming sense of guilt, he had agreed to let his daughter stay to help care for the chief. The daughter tended to the chief, never leaving his side until he was completely healed. She was the only one he would let dress his wound or touch him in any way, as her touch was the only one that did not bring him pain. A week after his father was killed, the chief's mother passed away in her sleep. Her spirit had left to reconnect with her soulmate. Heartbroken, the chief disappeared that night. The tribe members feared the worst as they searched for him. As night fell, the blonde woman headed out into the woods. When a warrior stopped her and asked her where she was going, she simply replied, "I can feel him. He needs me, so I'm going to him." Baffled, the warrior silently escorted her. When they arrived at the tribe's spiritual cave, he realized she had been telling the truth. There was no way she could have known about that place. He stood guard outside the cave as she went to her chief. Once they emerged the next day, it was apparent that the chief was doing much better. He seemed to have gotten most of his strength back, and was no longer consumed by sorrow and pain. After that, they were inseparable. Eventually, the settlers returned peacefully to pay respect to the union of the chief and the settler's daughter. They came bearing gifts of gold, seeds, and materials. The natives used the gifts wisely to grow and develop. That spring, the leader's daughter and the chief welcomed a beautiful new life into the world. That was the first of their 2 children. Thanks to their love and devotion, their family lineage still runs strong, and these lands continue to provide. He stopped to look at me. "That was an amazing story, but I'm not sure how it relates to me." He nodded and silently held out his hand towards mine. I hesitantly placed my hand in his. As I did, images from both the past and present flashed before my eyes. I saw the chief as he teleported, saving the tribe members, and then saving the leader's daughter. Then, as I blinked, I saw Heath disappearing and reappearing around me in the same way just yesterday. I saw the sadness and pain written on the chief's face, and the way it seemed to ease when she placed her hands on him. I blinked again. I was back in my dream from last night, when I had placed my hands on Heath's shoulder, and how he had placed his hands on top of mine, holding it there. These flashes of correlation continued for another moment, before his voice broke me from the trance. "Understand? I believe you are to do for him what the settler's daughter did for the chief. I'm worried that you are his only hope to overcome the pain. If he doesn't do that, he will not be able to control his ability. To put it simply, he may not survive." As he said that, he gave my hand, which was still in his, a little squeeze. "Our family needs you." I looked at him in disbelief. How could any of this be real? It all seemed so far-fetched. Teleporting and healing touches. He must think that I was a fool to think I'd believe any of that. But wait, how did he know about my dream? And the things that had transpired between me and Heath? Better question, how was he able to show me visions just by the touch of his hand? Come on, think. There has to be a logical explanation for all this. Oh, wait, what was it that they say the Native Americans used to smoke? I wonder if some of that was burning nearby. Enough of that could have this effect, right? Yes, that had to be it. There was no other logical explanation. Unless I had gone completely insane. Chapter 8. "What the hell? Get your hands off her!" Logan's voice rang out. Startled, I hopped up and spun around to look at him. I was surprised by the look on his face. It was a mix between looking horrified and irate. I knew he was probably ticked that I had my hand in some random stranger's, but his look didn't match what I had been expecting. "Come here now!" he blurted out in his most authoritative tone he had ever used with me. Not wanting to cause a scene, I hurried over to him. I was surprised when he wrapped his arm around me, slightly shoving me forward. "Run," he instructed. I glanced back, trying to determine what had caused his bizarre behavior, only to discover that the man I had been speaking to had vanished. As I started to jog, Logan pulled my arm to keep up with him. "Logan, slow down!" I panted breathlessly after running at full speed for what felt like 20 minutes straight. He ignored me and kept dragging me along with him for another 5. "Logan, stop! Look around. It's just us. If he meant to harm me, he would have long before you showed up." Logan finally came to a stop as we got to the portion of the creek that continued past the main estate. His eyes darted all around to ensure we were safe. He wrapped his arms around me and pressed a kiss on the top of my head before pulling me in even tighter. Normally, I would have melted into his embrace, but I was still attempting to catch my breath, and his constricting arms were making it damn near impossible. I gently pushed back and looked up into his eyes. "I'm okay, really." Just then, over Logan's shoulder, I saw movement in one of the windows of the estate. It was Heath. He stared out for but a moment before quickly pulling the curtains shut. A strange feeling came over me, and a small part of me wished there would have been a way I could go check on him without it being awkward. "I'm sorry for not believing you before. I'll vouch for you with Asher, and we can look into finding somewhere else to live right away." "No, you don't have to do that. Remember how I mentioned that I thought something strange was going on behind the scenes?" "Yeah," he responded, sounding a bit leery. "Well, I think I was right. I just need a little bit more time to verify some information, and if it checks out, everything will make sense. Well, sort of makes sense anyway." Logan raised a brow. "You know, you aren't making any sense right now, right?" "Look, give me till tomorrow morning to do some research, and then I'll explain everything. I promise, okay?" "Okay, but you aren't leaving my sight," he replied. I stayed up the majority of the night on the computer, searching for anything I could find on Native Americans in the area. It was close to 3 a.m. when I finally found what I had been looking for. A small local website had a retelling of the story that the man had told me today. My jaw dropped as a sketch of the man was featured in the middle of the page. The small caption stated that he was the first grandchild of the settler's daughter and chief. He was believed to be the most powerful shaman and seer any local tribe had ever seen. I stared at the screen in utter disbelief for a long time. I knew I should feel freaked out, but instead, I felt an unmistakable feeling of peacefulness. I stretched and walked over to gaze out my window. My eyes needed a break from the computer screen. There he was. Heath was off in the distance by the creek. I stared at him for a moment before realizing he was staring back at me. Just then, I jumped back as Logan's arm wrapped around my shoulders, and he leaned forward to peer out the window. "Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you," I said. "No worries. What were you looking at?" he asked, still looking out into the darkness. I had a feeling I already knew what I would find, but I glanced back out nevertheless. My suspicions were confirmed. Heath was gone. "Oh, nothing. Just taking a break from the computer screen." "Did you find what you were looking for?" "I did, but I'm tired now." "Can we go over everything in the morning with Asher too?" I asked him. After getting ready for bed, I wasn't surprised to find Logan waiting for me. Although I had found everything that had transpired quite nerve-wracking, something was telling me I was safe and I didn't have anything to worry about. However, there was no way I was about to explain that to Logan right now. So I turned off the light, lay down beside him, and gave in to my exhaustion. Alright guys, next reading we will be picking up on Chapter 9 of Their Legend, Our Destiny. See you then.